Fantastic. Well, I want to thank everybody for attending today. This session is called Accessibility on Aisle 3, Discussions of Digital and Physical Accessibility Practice in Grocery Retail Environments. My name is Dr. Audrey Reinert. I am a senior design researcher at HEB, focused primarily on customer experience. And my co-presenter today is
Vanessa Ayon, and I am a design researcher on the partner experience side, mainly during the curbside processes whenever you put in a curbside order at our grocery store at HEB.
Now, for the folks who are watching online, Audrey is in the red shirt, Vanessa is in the black shirt. So let's get started.
So some quick facts about HEB. As you can tell, we are big fans, not just because we work there, but because HEB is a Texas-based grocery store. And a lot of our customers, even before, for example, I'm a Texas native gal. And so before I even started working here, HEB was my grocery store. Walmart, who? I don't know. But we have about 435 plus stores in Texas and some in Mexico now. Our partner population is over 160,000, and we make well over 46 billion sales annually. We've been in business since 1905, and so that puts us about around 125 years. HEB in itself is I would say we have a little bit of a cult following here in Texas, if you can't tell, but there's a well-rhyming reason for that. And one of those reasons is because we are a people company first who just happens to sell groceries. So as you can see throughout this presentation, we're gonna give you a little bit of a reason why we are people-centered first. Before we move forward, some of the things that we're going to be talking about today are grocery retail kind of like language, and maybe even HEB language. So we just wanted to give y'all a little bit of a glossary. Whenever you hear racetrack layout, we're mainly talking about the layout of the grocery store. This usually is a design layout that helps guide customers through a predefined path, typically starting at the entrance where the check stands are, and it takes you typically throughout all of our departments that we offer at HEB before circling all the way back around to check out for your groceries. When we talk about store leaders, our store leaders encompasses HEB's leadership roles in stores. These are our top store leaders, which are our head like store owners, department leaders, managers, and so forth. And then whenever we say partners, as we mentioned, Audrey and I are in HEB partners, that's what HEB calls employees, because we all hold a stake into our business and we take a lot of pride in that. So we are partners. Any questions? No? Cool. So grocery retailers and accessibility. Why is practicing accessibility crucial in this space? Well, let's talk about the shopping experience for a little bit. Who actually likes doing their grocery shopping? Oh, okay. That's actually more than I expected.
About half the room just raised their hand.
Well, that's great. I'm so happy for y'all. I hate doing my grocery shopping. That's why I do curbside. But you know, whenever people do their shopping experience, most of our customers and oftentimes our partners who work in the store as well, they have to navigate a couple of multiple things that can either enhance or deter their experience when grocery shopping. So at HEB, we have a lot of unique stores. And so being able to find your way through the aisles, through store layouts, through different departments, finding your products, that can be cumbersome and a big cognitive load for some people. We also offer additional services that not every single grocery store offers. We have a business center, we have pharmacy, we have curbside, we have delivery services, we have a floral department, and so forth. There's also a lot of sensory overload whenever you're going into grocery stores. There's a lot of visuals and displays, different types of lighting, overall noise congestion. crowding, whether it's by customer crowding in an aisle or even partners trying to restock shelves and so forth. There's language and physical barriers like placing orders at bakery counters for a custom cake, requesting help with our digital devices nowadays. Whenever you go grocery shopping, there's more digital tech involved. There's mobility needs whenever you have to go grocery shopping, whether you have to bend to lift heavy items, you have to push or pull your carts. And then, of course, there is the search and discovery of the products that you want to buy. There is comparing savings options. All of these things happen at once whenever you visit your grocery store. And, sometimes it could be a lot. So why does a grocery store like H-E-B care about accessibility? As I said, we are a people company. We want to serve as many people as possible. Every one of our stores is a little bit different because we align with our local demographics. We serve the needs of those communities. Grocery stores are a frequent touch point in our daily lives. So accessibility issues that you experience whenever you're doing grocery shopping becomes more salient. You start noticing it more. If you're like me, you end up hating grocery shopping. And then being able to be independent and, buy and purchase your own food is a source of identity for some of us. And being able to meet this basic need profoundly impacts our sense of self-worth. Now, there is some behind the scenes considerations that all of our store leaders have to account for whenever we are designing the layout of our stores, designing what products go where, and just designing the store experience in general for our customers and partners. And I'm about to talk about some of them in a little bit. Sorry, it's something.
Sorry, there seems to be a search bar open, and I'm not sure how that got opened.
Okay. Okay. So when our store leaders are making decisions, there's trade-offs. And a lot of trade-offs include shelf and product displays, restocking procedures, signage and announcements, aisle crowding, new tech being introduced, parking considerations, and our digital training. Our store leaders are always responsible at first hand, our store leaders are always responsible for our partner and customer experiences while maintaining a successful business at the same time. So what does this mean? So whenever you balance all of those considerations and trade-offs, you have to start thinking, how can I make my business successful? Well, we have to also consider sales volume. How much of this product do we sell in a day? How can we maximize the number of items we sell? We have to consider how we're marketing. How are we placing products on the shelves to where their logo is visible, even though maybe the handle to grab it off the shelf isn't as accessible? Shelf space is a valuable resource whenever you're in the grocery retail business. Our brand deals impact the prominence of the item on your shelf. And we sometimes even have to group our items by promotion. And then whenever it comes to our product considerations, we're thinking, is this item perishable? Are the product dimensions in weight aligned with where they are on the shelves? Is this item breakable? Is it a highly lost item that, can be maybe stolen easily or just like lose track of? And then again, we have to also consider grouping our related items as well. So when we think about accessibility solutions in the grocery retail space, we try to get into a nexus threshold of 3 main components. Is our solution sustainable? Is our solution feasible? And is our solution scalable? And a lot of this has to do with being people-centered first. So on this screen, yes, you can see it, there is a Caroline's cart. And a Caroline's cart is a cart where you can put your child, your loved one, facing you while you're pushing the cart and still have a basket in front of you whenever you're doing your grocery shopping. So we visited one of our H-E-B stores, And we got the story of how and why this Caroline's cart was acquired, because not every single HEB has this one. But our store leaders, one of the things that they do a lot in all HEB stores is they walk the floor. When you walk the floor, it means you're keeping an eye out on one, making sure that your space is clean, that it's accessible, and that everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of being like a partner. They're doing their job. Customers are having a good experience. Well, this store leader, as she was walking the floor, she noticed a customer, and it was a frequent customer who comes to this HEB, who was pushing her daughter in a wheelchair, and she was in the middle, and behind her was the shopping cart. And so she was basically doing this kind of motion throughout her whole shop. And so whenever our store leader saw that, she started researching. She started trying to figure out, what can I do to help this customer that I see very frequently and improve their grocery shopping experience? Because it's a salient experience. That's something that you do every, 3 days, maybe once a week, I don't know. uh, and so that is how our Caroline's cart got acquired for this store. And all of our store leaders are trying to do this and walking the floor and keeping an eye out for customer needs. And if you're a frequent customer at an HEB, they will notice if you have certain accommodations that need to be done for you. And we follow through. We know that this solution is both sustainable, it's meeting the needs, it's scalable because it is a grocery cart, so it's something that could be accommodated. We can remove the seat if we need to and just use it as a regular grocery cart. And it's feasible. It's understandable for the reason why we need it.
So we've talked a lot about trade-offs in the grocery retail environment. Now, for folks watching at home, what you're seeing on screen right is a photo of me. This is at my local HEB, which is off of South Congress and Slaughter, so about 2 miles from St. Edward's University. So it's a photo of me reaching overhead trying to get at these big blue igloo coolers. Now, I personally like this photo because in it, we're showing that there's multiple different trade-offs and the kind of decisions that our in-store leaders and even as design researchers, we need to keep in mind when it comes to these considerations. Now, so you notice about waist height on me, you see a lot of these they're 12 packs of soda. They are arranged in a certain way. Within the grocery retail environment, each square foot of shelf space is worth quite a significant amount of money. So we are trying to maximize the amount of shelf space while also making it so that this is a product that you can physically access. But this also represents a really interesting set of trade-offs that we have to think about in retail environments. So not just at HEB, but also big box retailers like Target, Office Max, and others in this kind of problem space. So one of the trade-offs that folks have to make is cooler placement. So where do you put, coolers are big. They're not very heavy, relatively speaking, but they're big and they're kind of bulky. So you can't fit a lot of them on a shelf. So you have to put them somewhere in the store. And you want to ideally, from a retail management perspective, you want to group like products together. We want you're walking down the aisle, you see these 12 packs, you see these 2-liter bottles, and it's like, oh man, I want to buy these things. I need somewhere to store them. So we want you to reach for that cooler. Now, something to keep in mind is we don't sell a lot of coolers on a daily basis. We maybe sell, I don't have the exact statistics at hand, but your average store is not moving these products all that frequently compared to soft drinks, which even in the time we took taking this photo, which was about 5 minutes, we were kind of walking through with the store leader. We saw about 10 people come by and grab one of those 12 packs of soda. So that's that's kind of a data point of 1, but this is a product that people are frequently buying. So one of the trade-offs that folks have to make is, where do we put these big items that we don't sell very often in comparison to cans of soda, which can break? If you drop one of those 12 packs, you can actually shatter those cans. Now, sodas are a non-perishable but frequent purchase. So you don't have to worry about refrigeration, but they're heavy enough that you do need to figure out where to place them in on the aisle so that if you are in a wheelchair or you have that mobility limitation, you need to be able to physically reach out and put it into your cart. So what are some possible solutions? What are ways that we can fix this kind of toyetic problem? Now, option one, well, why not just move the coolers down? That is a legitimate option. And there are other parts of the store where coolers are slightly lower. Now, those particular coolers are the Yeti brand, so they are an HEB owned brand. So we kind of want you to buy those. Now, the advantage of moving those coolers down, they're easier for customers to reach. So out of curiosity for the folks in the room, how many times when you've been shopping at your local grocery store have you had trouble reaching a product? All right. About 5 hands just went up. So when we're thinking about this, yeah, we can move those coolers down, but we're sacrificing shelf space. And here's the real challenge. Where do you move those sodas? You have to move them somewhere else in order to make that product accessible. So when we're talking about feasibility and scalability, we need to keep in mind that, well, our store leaders are basically playing shelf Jenga. And when we're thinking about this, in order to make one product accessible, we may have to make something else inaccessible, or we may have to make it more difficult for a customer to reach something that we actually know they're going to buy more of. So what's the other solution? The more sustainable, more people-centric focused solution is call a partner. Now, the advantage of this is you can go into any HEB all the way from Dallas to Brownsville or Mexico. You're going to have the same customer experience. That is fantastic. It doesn't take much to train people to come over and help you get a product. But it does lead to a temporarily blocked aisle, which does present its own mobility challenge, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, and sort of the steps we can take in a retail environment to make that traffic pattern a little bit easier. Now, why would we want to call an associate? So how many folks, not just grocery shopping, just in general, have had an experience where you've needed to call over an associate? One, almost everybody in the room, we've had to do this. I've had to do it when clothes shopping, or I've had to do it when buying sporting goods, because you have a question. It is a low-tech solution, which when we are thinking about accessibility in these kind of environments, we want our products to scale, and we want that consistency of experience, and we want this to be something that we can implement today. As such, it's a low-tech but high-touch solution. This enables us to help respond to your specific needs directly versus trying to create a one-size-fits-all solution. We can also, in having this one-on-one experience with a partner, there's some emotional reassurance and there's flexibility in problem solving as well. So when we're thinking about how do we make a space more accessible, you want to empower people to make decisions based on the circumstances they're seeing, so that there is that flexibility to ultimately help make the shopping experience more accessible overall. Now, big takeaways. So if you take away nothing else from this presentation, if you leave with nothing. Sustainable, scalable, flexible. Feasible. No, sorry. I'm horribly dyslexic, which has led to some interesting shopping experiences coming home with the wrong pasta. So when we're thinking about sustainability, these solutions need to be self-sustaining. You've probably, I know in my career as an industrial engineer, and before that working and as doing accessibility research, there's a lot of great solutions out there, but they don't always sustain themselves. So it's like, hey, there's this great idea, and then something breaks. And then the software that you need in order to run that app is no longer supported. And, well, your customers are impacted because the app that they were relying on no longer works. So the solution needs to be self-sustaining. And from a business-centered perspective, we want this to be cost efficient. We want this to be something that we can provide the same level of service, the same level of customer experience, and the same positive experience to everybody. So it needs, and when we say everybody, we mean that you should be able to go into any store, any HEB in Texas, and have the same customer experience. We also want this solution to be scalable. We need it to fit a variety of problem contexts, which is why calling over an associate is often one of the easiest accessibility solutions you can implement, because people are very, very good at novel problem solving. Our partners, we can figure out like, oh, somebody can't reach something. All right, well, what do I need to do to solve this? So rather than creating a one size fits none solution, scalability, and this also focuses when we think about training, that this is something that everybody in store should be able to accomplish to the best of their ability. And feasibility. It should be actionable in the near term. So the way I like to think about this, because I come from a bit more of a tech background, is we don't need a great solution next year. We need a great solution today. We need something that I can give to a store leader. So a store leader at the SoCo, so South Congress and Slaughter, or South Congress and Oltloff. Those are HEB locations, by the way. And those solutions should be implemented the same way every time, with minimal training and minimal effort. All right. Before we get on to our case studies, does anyone have any questions, or are there any questions in the chat? Yes, Kylie. Oh, curbside. Okay. Yeah. So Kylie asked, what is curbside? So curbside is, here at HEB, we have the ability, we allow customers to shop online for your groceries. And you can set up a particular delivery time where you can drive by and pick up your items and shop there. It was started a little bit before the pandemic, but the pandemic really helped boost that particular part of our business. We also do offer at-home delivery services, so you can shop online and have the product delivered to you rather than you having to drive there. I'm not seeing any other hands raised, and I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. All right, so I'm going to pass you back over to Vanessa.
And so for this presentation, we visited 3 different HEB stores to kind of come up with some of these case studies that you're about to see. 2 of these HEB stores are mine and Audrey's home stores. So the top picture that you see on the right hand, y'all's right hand, yeah, is my Pflugerville HEB store. It's north of Austin. The very awesome, cool, and unique HEB store that you see down here on the bottom right-hand side is Audrey's. And then we also went to another HEB store that's more central Austin. This store is very unique because it is walking distance from the Texas School of Visually Impaired and Blind.
For the blind and visually impaired.
For the blind and visually impaired. Thank you. And this store specifically has partners who attend the school, and obviously also customers who attend the school. And so their ways of working and their processes are people-centered for accessibility to the max, basically. And so, yeah, these are some of the stores that we visited to prepare for this presentation. And I'm about to walk you through a experience that a partner that works in digital, like me and Audrey, might actually go through whenever we start considering accessibility in our work. So this is Eloise Montoya. On the screen, you can see that Eloise is a female. She's wearing red glasses, red shirt, repping HEB colors, and she's very happy and ecstatic to do her job. So Eloise is a HEB digital partner, and she's a designer. She works on digital partner experiences for stores and maybe even some MWT departments. MWT stands for our manufacturing, warehouse, and transportation partners. As part of her job, Eloise loves talking with and interviewing partners. So like Audrey and I did is by visiting different stores, what we do is talk to and interview partners. While she's doing this, she has to make sure that her interviews are not just accessible, but also inclusive. And she designs digital products and UIs to fit partners and store operational needs. Whenever she's designing, she also has to make sure that those designs are accessible and inclusive. So how could someone like Eloise start practicing accessible and inclusive practices in her work? So here's the first case study where in HEB, our partner experience, we pride ourselves in knowing that here, everybody belongs. And no, that's not technically what HEB stands for, but it fits. So let's talk about HEB's disability inclusion journey. So, and we call this like the first step. Between 2014 and 2017, the inclusion journey really started at HEB. There were committees called partner resource groups that were started, and there was a specific committee focusing on diversity and inclusion. Within this committee, they started doing a lot of research, collecting stats, and they presented reports to our, I don't know, top CEOs or whatever. And it helped HEB acknowledge the unemployment stats of our Texas disability population. From there, we realized this is an opportunity for us. We are a Texas-based company. We are a people-first company. Let's do something for this. So we started building relationships with various nonprofits, agencies, and school programs. All of this set the foundation to pilot our partner and candidate initiatives to recruit potential candidates to come work for HEB. Through all of this, our Disability Bridges team officially was created in our corporate recruiting department. So this really set the stage for what's to come in our disability inclusion journey. Pretty soon, our neurodivergent internships launched in HEB Corporate. We started implementing Storal referral processes specifically for candidates and partners with disabilities. If we had a partner currently with a disability, but they were interested in moving into another role, we had specific referral processes for them. Or maybe you're a partner and you have a loved one who needs a job and HEB seems like a great opportunity for them. There's a specific process for them. Our Disability Bridges was a team that was very, very small. But through all of these initiatives, they ended up moving into our Talent Connection team, which is a much wider team in our corporate offices. And this helped us reach even more partners, even more candidates. So this number is a lot higher today, but our disability store hires have reached over 100 partners since our Disability Bridges team moved to our Talent Connections department. From this movement as well, our neurodivergent internship also launched in HEB Digital. And then also now we are implementing our production and MWT partner disability employment programs coming soon. And so as you can see, in every avenue of HEB, whether it's corporate, whether it's stores, digital, MWT, or internships, we really pride ourselves in being disability inclusive. And so whenever you join HEB, there is a lot of resources that partners have access to. And if you're in a role like me who goes into stores, or like Eloise who goes into stores and talks to partners pretty frequently, and you want to make sure that your interviews and guides are inclusive, we have a lot of trainings as well. So some disability accommodations and support that HEB provides are always ASL and other language interpreters for job recruitment. We have digital assistive technology accommodations, physical space accommodations, remote and hybrid work accommodations, and probably a lot more, but this is what I found. And so whenever we were thinking about trainings and going into stores, there's actually a lot of resources and trainings that HEB provides us. We have access to different webinars, training modules and videos or resources, all encompassing different disability avenues, whether it's neurodivergence, blindness, physical and mobility, disability awareness. We have a software called Fable, which I think is presenting today as well. And they are a research and testing software that can recruit users that use assistive technology so that we can test our digital experiences for our customers and partners. So I'm gonna close that. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what I did. It was,
Sorry, technical difficulties.
okay.
All right.
Okay, and okay. And then we also have visual design guides. We have developer checklists. We have office hours for accessibility. And we have a library of designs that are already accessibility approved as well. It's called our Mortar Design Library. And so due to obviously not being able to share proprietary data, this screen is after speaking to a lot of our digital partners. We did a little bit of interviews. And we started asking around, how do you approach accessibility in your work? And how do you see that influence influence the type of products that you work on? And so a lot of our digital partners are currently going through creating digital processes for something that was paper and manual first. We are moving into a digital world, not just as customers, but as partners as well. And so by introducing new technology, we have to be accessible to not just different age groups, but different need accommodations. Whenever we design new interfaces, we are designing for cognitive load of our partners because they think and make multiple decisions throughout the day. They are doing multiple tasks and they are intaking a lot of information. So how can we make all of that easier for them? Is we make simplistic designs that meet the needs and their goals. We also have partners who are not always English predominant speakers. We have Spanish, we have Vietnamese, we have ASL partners. So another thing that is always considered and incorporated into our designs is being language agnostic. We use icons whenever we can to supplement words. Again, with simplistic design, we use color to balance out being language agnostic as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our Mortar Design Library already fits the needs of our WCAG accessibility design standards all throughout color, text size, and layout. So why does it matter? Like, why am I talking to you about HEB's inclusive journey, what we do as partners? Well, again, people matter. As HEB partners, we're committed to fostering an inclusive culture, not just as an initiative, but as an ongoing and evolving mission. The more we do this, the more we learn, and the more we can continue to innovate in this space. Our human-centered design practices shape our partner and customer experiences, and it also impacts our customers as well. We learned that solutions that improve the experience for everyone in a sustainable, feasible, and scalable way is a win-win, not just for our people, but for our business as well. So I'm gonna hand it, well, actually, before I hand it off, is there any questions? Okay, so now I'll hand it back off to Audrey to talk about more case studies from the customer experience side.
All right. So we're going to talk about customer experience from the perspective of Stephen Miller. Now, Stephen is a lifelong HEB customer who regularly shops at Austin 9. Now, that particular location, if we remember a few slides back, that is one of the stores that is located very close to the Texas Institute for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Stephen is experiencing progressive blindness, so he was a sighted individual, but is slowly losing his sight. He's very interested in problems related to meal prep. So how can you make healthy, nutritious, and affordable meals while you are experiencing progressive blindness? He does use the HEB app for in-store navigation and product finding. Now, let's talk about in-store navigation. So, bit of fun trivia. The average grocery store in the United States ranges in size from about 30,000 square feet, if that's on the smaller end, that's like going to Aldi's or even a small Trader Joe's, to 100,000 square feet, or about 30,000 square meters. 100,000 square feet is a lot of space. There's a joke to be made about everything's bigger in Texas. Well, everything's bigger in grocery retail. Now, so what you're seeing on screen, this is a map of the South Congress and Slaughter HEB. So this is the location that I shop at. And you can find this map online at heb.com. You can kind of break down, you can find these maps online for any of our stores anywhere in the state of Texas or in Mexico. So I want us to do a little bit of a visualization exercise. I want you to imagine you're walking into your home grocery store. What are the sights, sounds, and smells that you first experience when you are walking into a grocery store? This is an audience interactive portion. So I will be calling on participants. I can tell you what I experienced, so I'll get us started off. So I usually, when I do shop in store, so I usually start on the entrance on screen left. So I come in, and one of the first things that I smell, Blooms is our in-house florist brand. So that's one of the first things I smell. That tells me exactly where I am. One of the first things I hear the sound of a check stand. There's about 20 independent check stands, and we've got about 16 self-checkout lanes. And if you've ever been in a grocery store in the afternoon in peak hours, you know it's loud. You've got people talking, you've got lots of people moving ice, lots of kids fussing around, people talking about what they're going to eat. So I can use that as a location. Now, this store is about 100,000 square feet. The map here doesn't really give you a good sense of scale. So I'm walking in, I can smell the flowers, I can hear the check stand, and I can see off to my left is produce. For other folks in the audience, what are your first sensations and experiences? Okay, clatter the shopping carts.
North Carolina, I shop at a Harris Teeter. And when you get into the store, it's identical to what you said, but you have to go through the area with the seasonal stuff. So it's going to change, you know, in the winter, there'll be something that's like cinnamon or pine cone scented, or you'll be walking past the summer, spring stuff, or there'll be firewood. So there's also some extra seasonal.
Okay, so we've got some extra seasonal. Gonna come over to Cobb here.
So I've observed that the thing that's goofy about our store is that we don't have, when growing up, right, you had very straight lines. All the aisles were straight lines. Now it is, nothing is in a straight line anymore. And so we have maybe 5 or 6 aisles that are straight, but to your point, in the 100,000 square foot one, right, it's lots of angles, lots of, what do they call, like end caps, but just little blocks, if you will, as well as the hum of all of the coolers.
We're gonna kind of touch on the hum of the coolers point. You're predicting the talk, and I love that. I see that you want to. All right.
Hello. My home HEB is on Manchac and Slaughter, and I usually am trying to like sneak my way in the door. So I'm like kind of moving between people because I'm trying to get to sushi over on the right and sneak back before my lunch hour is over.
I promise that was not a paid plant. Is there anyone in the chat? We can't exactly see if you have any questions, but oh, okay. Well, no. So one of the things when we're thinking about navigation, How do you navigate a store? Well, if you're sighted, there's signs everywhere. There's signs for your meat, there's signs for your produce, there's signs for sushi, for your your to-go meals. You can pretty quickly figure out where you need to be. And from a cognitive science perspective, we all have enough experience with grocery stores that we can kind of develop a template mental model of like, okay, well, I know what is going to be in a grocery store, and I know like how meat's probably going to be near dairy just because that's where the refrigeration is, and a whole bunch of other things that are going to go on. You can also rely, especially for our really, really large stores, it's kind of like an Everest expedition at a certain point. You can rely on digital and mobile maps to figure out where you are. And this, I've actually used these. I've gone into other HEBs here in the Austin area or in other parts of Texas. And it's like, I don't know where something is. And I don't always want to walk 3,000 steps to try and find coffee. So you can rely on digital and mobile maps. Now, what if you have a low vision partner or a customer? What do they use? Landmarks. So the purpose of that exercise we just did is to get you to think about physical space in a non-intuitive way. So the kind of tactile cues, olfactory cues, auditory cues, and how those factor into your navigation plan. So these are quotes on screen right. So one customer we interviewed who was willing to chat with us for about 20 minutes, they listened for the sound of the register as a way to orient themselves. If they knew where the register was, even if they got lost in store, if they could find their way back to the register, they could find where they needed to be. They also relied on smell and the intensity of smell. How many of you, when you walk into your local grocery store, you know you're in the bakery section? Yep, the smell of fresh bread, or in our case, the smell of our fresh butter tortillas. So highly recommend you go try those. You can also rely on temperature as an interesting physical cue. So one of our partners was explaining that when they were doing the rounds and stocking shelves and helping other customers, they would rely on tactile cues such as temperature. So they knew if they were facing, this is going to be a little tricky to do. So if we imagine that the back where the projector is a big refrigeration bank. So, if you go into a store, you've got the doors that open and close for your ice cream, for your dairy products, or you just have the kind of open air chillers for meat. If you can feel that cold, you kind of know where you are, or at least you can start figuring out. You can also use, if you reach down and you feel, we're going to use this table as an example. If I put my hand down and I feel meat and plastic, I know I'm in the meat section. And I know I can start using that to develop my mental map. So how do we improve navigation in a store? And how do we do so in a feasible and scalable manner? So option one, to speak to Cobb here in the audience, his point, consistent aisle orientation. So don't change things up on people. Make sure that, when you have those straight lines, that ease of navigation helps create a sense of predictability when you are trying to navigate a new or large store. Now, there's also some real estate considerations. There's a lot that goes into actually planning the physical layout of the store. The aisles have to be 7 feet apart. There's other considerations such as, drainage and plugs and power systems for your big coolers. But as long as things are relatively straight and consistent, that helps with navigation. Also, you want to keep your frequently purchased items on your critical path. So I'm going to skip back a few slides. So we mentioned earlier in this presentation a thing called a racetrack. So if we're starting in the bottom left corner, walking around the store, next time you're in your local grocery store, try to walk the racetrack. And you're going to notice that a lot of the things that you buy frequently are going to be on that track or just right off it. The reason that is, well, we want you to find the products that you need as quickly as possible. So one way that we can make a space more accessible is by ensuring that we keep those items, especially the items on that racetrack, in that critical path, so that you are going to be walking, you're going to go from your bread to produce to meat to dairy to home goods to checkout. And along the way, we do want you to check out other things. Maybe you want to buy some alcohol. Maybe you want to buy some pet food. Now, another solution that is kind of a low tech, but easily kind of scalable solution, change your floor texture. It sounds a little strange, but if you're walking, and especially if you are using auditory cues when you have your cane sweeping out in front of you, that change in texture can tell you that there's something coming up and something different. We can also think about maps and tactile cues. So one of my first jobs out of college, I worked on signage and designing space. It was, how do you make these maps, especially for big residential facilities, navigable? So option one, you hang maps like this. And you also hang them in such a way where you make them tactile. You use Braille to tell people where they are, or tell people where big sections are. You can also leverage your olfactory cues, especially when giving directions. How many times has somebody given you directions and said, all right, you're going to walk down 3 aisles, then you're going to turn left, and it's going to be about mid-height. I've had that happen a lot. Yeah, it's amazing. Granted, one of my jobs in college, I was a tour guide, so I was very, very used to giving those kind of cues. But when we're thinking about it, what if I gave you those directions in terms of, okay, so if you're starting at the register, you need to go about 3 aisles up, and then you need to turn towards bakery, so you're going to start smelling bread. That's helpful in its own way. We can also leverage some sensory cues, so we can say, as you're walking through the store, hey, if you start to feel a little bit cold, you've probably gone too far and you need to turn around. Oh, we do have a question. Fantastic.
So how do you guys train your partners to do what you're just now describing?
Yeah, that is a great question. So all of our partners that work in stores, they have access. Well, we have access to it too, but our store partners use it more frequently. We have a website called iDevelop, and in iDevelop there is multiple resources for different types of training models. So in the partner experience case study that I talked about, a lot of those training models can be found there. And then also based off of experience and knowing your customer population, if you work at a store that has a high volume of customers who need different types of accessibility needs, our store leaders are in charge of knowing that and training their partners one-on-one on how to approach those solutions.
And speaking of solutions, when we're thinking about technical and digital solutions, how many of you, not just for a grocery store, but even getting to this particular building today, if you're not from St. Edwards, how many of you needed to rely on a digital map to get here? All right, almost everybody, which is pretty interesting. So how could we make map and wayfinding more accessible? Well, being a kind of tech-aligned person, my first response is haptic feedback. You're walking along, and what if you had RFID chips just spaced throughout different parts of the campus or different parts of your store? And it's like, oh, when you pass the aisle that you're looking for, so let's say you're looking for aisle 14, which is your international foods and pasta. Your phone vibrates, telling you need to turn right. That's a solution. Bit high tech, requires us to actually access the customer's phone, and some technical solutions, nothing that can't be overcome though. But what if we could provide auditory cues? When our partners are giving directions, we can say, when you reach this particular location, you're going to start smelling coffee, or you're going to start feeling it's going to be cold on your left side if you're approaching from this direction. So how can we think about leveraging other solutions, either through auditory feedback, haptic feedback, or even olfactory-based instructions? Also, dedicated partner assistance. So one of the questions we asked, and we asked various store leaders this and various partners, because to give you a little bit of an idea on my background, I originally got into accessibility focused on the aging in place movement for older adults. So one of the questions we always like to ask is, well, could we provide our customers with a dedicated partner? So a shopper that shops with you. Great idea. Except it's not really that great. We received mixed feedback from partners and customers when we brought this idea up. From the store staffing perspective, it'd say, hey, what if somebody goes over their allotted time? You know, you reserve somebody for an hour, but that person maybe really just wants to talk to you, and you know, you're keeping that partner from other duly appointed duties. There's also some safety concerns that can come up, like, oh, we want to make sure that you're getting a consistent customer experience without it being scary. There's also another thing that we asked, you know, especially when you're bringing in large groups of people, changing needs cannot be easily predicted. So sometimes it's easy to think like, oh, you're going into a grocery store. You probably have that mental shopping list, the 10 things you need. But while you're there, you may see something. You may be like, oh, I want to try this particular product, or your needs may change throughout the day. So just because you might have asked for assistance at one point, you might not need the same assistance when you show up. And we also want to balance between the need and desire to help people while retaining a degree of independence. Yeah. You know, one of our customers actually brought up, like, no, it can be kind of patronizing to have somebody who's, you know, shopping with me, and it feels like they're trying to rush me, and it feels like they're trying to do things for me. And I get that they're trying to be nice. I get they're trying to be helpful, but it can also be like, oh man, I want to do this myself. And there is, especially when you're talking about older adults, you do want to empower people to make those choices and be able to still keep that skill active and that kind of internal loci of control. We also want to make sure that our solutions are feasible, sustainable, and scalable. Now, one way to do this, we don't want to single anybody out, because that can be introducing its own set of problems. So one way to think about this is to say, rather than saying, oh, this customer or this partner is deaf. Well, that's not helpful. You're setting that person up for bad experience, or even, you know, just bad customer experience. So simply say, deaf partners work here. Set the expectation. You don't know who's going to be hard of hearing, but you know there's somebody here. So have some grace, have some patience. You can enhance your non-visual cues for navigation and provide your directions in relation to major landmarks in store, such as relative to the bakery or the florist or your meat section. So before we go on to space, signage, and traffic, does anyone have any questions? I'm amazed that there's no questions. That means we're either doing so fantastic, you're stunned, or I've not done something well. All right, so we're going to talk about physical. Oh, sorry. There you go.
I'm curious if you've thought about and had any success with, like, in your app, when I go to search for something saying, great, it's an aisle 14, but getting more specific than that, given that your team members probably have really specific directions, but how do you expose that to a customer to understand quickly what that block of the aisle means, if you've gotten that far?
So we're going to have to be a little careful in how we answer this question, because we don't want to give away confidential information. No, it's Vanessa, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, short answer is we are talking about it. It has come to awareness, and as I mentioned, the Fable software that we have, where we get to test our products with users of assistive technology, is helping us get there. Yeah. Great question, though.
No. It's
a
not
great
poking the bear.
question.
It's because our in-store shoppers for curbside or delivery, they do have access to that kind of shelf level information. I think we're in talks with some of our teams about surfacing that level of information to customers. So that's all we can say right now without, you know.
Yeah. And it's a
Yeah.
great takeaway for our team that the question was asked. So thank you for asking.
All right, so let's talk about space, traffic, and signage. So once again, we're going to look at this map, but we're going to look at this map from the perspective of a store planner. Now, how many of you would you have been shopping, maybe just not even in a grocery store, just any retail environment, and you're shopping, you're walking along, you see this crowd of people all of a sudden, like all congregating around a particular aisle, or there's just suddenly a traffic jam. How many of you had that experience? All right, pretty much everybody. That's a pinch point. That's one of those locations in store where maybe you've got multiple people who are trying to turn and access a particular product or access something all at the same time, and it creates a traffic jam. Now, traffic jams are bad. We don't like traffic. It leads to congestion from a retail perspective. Too much congestion, people just get frustrated and they leave their cart and they walk away. That's bad. But when we're thinking about congestion and traffic from the perspective of accessibility, how do we predict this? And how do we help both our partners and customers navigate the store with this information in mind? Because if you've ever been in one of our HEBs, you've probably noticed a cart that looks like this. So for folks watching online, there on the right side of the screen, you see this big, it's a multi-rack shelf. This is what our in-store shoppers will do when you're ordering curbside or delivery. They're going to walk through the store. They're going to shop for you. And they're going to be shopping in one of these big carts. Now, one of these carts takes about 12 customers off the floor, just in terms of the physical basket that you are pushing. One of these big floating carts takes 12 carts off of our floor, which helps with traffic. But now you've got this big cart that people have to move around. So how do we think about traffic? Well, how do we think about traffic on the I-35? Time of day and day of week. Now, how many of you do your grocery shopping on a particular day of the week? I know for me, I almost always go on Wednesday night. Why do I go Wednesday night? My local HEB is very empty at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night. It makes it really easy to navigate. But we also know that there are certain locations, because I've sometimes had to go to that same HEB on Saturday afternoon. Yeah.
That's a busy day.
It is a busy day. The parking lot can hold about 1,000 cars, and I have trouble finding parking. On top of that, you have hundreds of people in the store. It's very loud, very stressful. It is a recipe for sensory overload. But we know that there's going to be certain times of day and certain days of the week that are always busier. And we also can do some predictive planning. If we have major storms, we do get hurricanes here in Texas. We get ice storms up north. We can do some event-driven traffic so we can kind of predict these surges. So we know, a few days before a hurricane hits, everybody's going to be buying water. Everyone's going to be buying toilet paper. But what we can do is, thanks to predictable design and thinking about that racetrack, what we can do is we can say, where are the high traffic areas in our store? Those high traffic areas include your dairy section, because everybody needs to buy milk, everybody needs to buy eggs. Your bakery section, people are buying their fresh bread, they're buying sandwich makings. Your meat section, people are buying cold items. So if we know where those high traffic areas are, one thing we can do from a design perspective, even before the first customer walks in the door, we can make sure there's enough space so that when traffic is going through the store, you don't have all these high traffic locations right next to each other. You space them out so that you are spacing traffic out evenly, or as evenly as possible throughout the store. We can also try to avoid blind corners. How many of you, I know I have done this, you've turned your corner and, there was somebody there. Not a pleasant experience. Actually last night I had a very enthusiastic child pushing the cart and clipped my leg. It was fine. Well, it's fine. Kid was excited. Kid was learning how to shop and just didn't realize that I was there trying to buy pickles. But when we think about this, we have a certain amount of traffic, and we also have in-store operations. We need to restock our shelves. We need to go throughout the day. Products are going to naturally deplete. When do we go and restock them? Now, if we think all the way back to the beginning of the presentation, we don't need to restock our coolers, which are up on the top part of the aisle, all that frequently. But what we do need to restock frequently are those sodas. people are going to come through. They want their Big Red. They want their Coke. They want their Sprite. So we need to figure out when in the day do we go and do that? Because a big pallet of soda will block an aisle for about 10 minutes. Yeah, and trying to get past a big pallet with a cart can be very, very frustrating.
And then add your curbside shoppers with those big red multi-level carts. Yeah, it can be tricky.
So how do we think about this? Now, I'm an industrial engineer, so I get really excited thinking about data and traffic patterns. So the image that you're seeing in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, that is a kind of conceptualized heat map. So the areas in red, those are your high traffic areas. Areas in blue, they're colder. You have less traffic throughout that part of the store. Now, what we can do is for any store, we can figure out where those hot points are. So one particular hot point that we've probably all encountered, checkout. Everybody has to go through checkout. Everybody's going to be there. That's going to be one of those pain points you cannot avoid. But what we can do is we can say, well, let's make sure that we're not putting some of those big high traffic areas right next to each other. So we can do traffic optimization as an accessibility solution. It's a bit technical, but when we're thinking about our curbside shoppers, they're shopping for 12 people. Now, it does present a lot of technical load, and we have a lot of partner-facing tools that Vanessa can kind of talk about that makes this process easier, but we can take carts off. We can take customer carts out of the store, which helps reduce that traffic, and we can also offer smaller hand baskets. You know, you sometimes are walking through, you don't need a big basket if you just have Tim's, unless you're buying like dog food or big items, stuff like that. But for smaller, you can use smaller carts. You can use smaller baskets. It's easier for somebody to move through a congested aisle with a hand basket. There's a joke about trying to get the hot sauce in your hand basket. We're going to move on. But we can also think about space design. So how do you make a space look bigger? You raise up your signage. Oh, sorry. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Sorry, I should have mentioned I'm a very interactive presenter, so I do like it when people want to respond. So one thing you can do is if your signage is all at the same height. Now I'm about 5'10", so the signage it comes out up to about eye level for me, which means I really can't see traffic. If I'm not careful, I can end up running into somebody. But what if we raise some of this signage up? Put it above your head. Now, it doesn't mean you have to look up, which introduces its own issues, but you can now see what's going on. You can hear better what's happening, and you can kind of gauge where traffic is so you can make better decisions. There's also some technical solutions that we can use, such as demand forecasting for curbside items. This is a little bit more predictive analytics, and I know we're kind of running short on time, so we're going to have to come back to that at a later time. Why does signage matter? Signage in your grocery store frames the customer experience. So I want you, this is the visualization exercise. Think about your local grocery store. Think about the signage in that grocery store that you go to all the time. What does it look like? What is being communicated by that design? You know, there's an entire field of design that goes into, you know, creating that brand look and feel. The signage at Trader Joe's is going to look and feel very different than the signage in an H-E-B, which will look different than the signage that is in an Aldi's or a Lidl or a Tesco. So why does signage matter? If you're annoyed or lost, you don't buy stuff. There's a major issue in grocery retail and just retail in general that if you can't find something, you don't know where to go, you just put it on the shelf and you walk away. I have lost count of how many times I've been shopping, reached out for dry goods, and oh, that is a package of meat. Now that package of meat we have to throw away. We lost that sale because we don't know how long it's been sitting there. We don't know what you've done to it. So when we're thinking about solutions that are scalable, sustainable, and feasible, signage is one of the first places we can go. So let's think about signage just to kind of ground expectations really fast. So these are some online examples. So you have big section signage, meat and seafood, fresh every day. Big, that's going to catch your attention when you're across the store. The smaller ones, the ones that hang on your aisle end caps, they give you a better idea of where things are. Now, the way I like to think about this is kind of from a taxonomy perspective. You know, if you're in the library, it's kind of like the Dewey Decimal System. You know, if I know I'm looking for a book on Texas history, all right, I know I probably need to be in U.S. in U.S. history state level. That gives me an idea where I need to start searching, and our signage can let you do that. And we also want to make sure that our digital experience matches this and matches your expectations. Because how many of you have had this experience? I know I've had it in other grocery stores where you're walking down the aisle and it's like, why is this here? Sometimes it's that item or like a product family that it's like, oh, I do not get why the Manischewitz is with the pickles. Very much a kind of out of left field. Now, sometimes there's a lot of stocking and shelf decisions that go into how this is made, and sometimes that might just be the only place you can put it. But from this sign, we've got flour, pancake and syrup, spices, cooking oil, canned fruit. This tells you everything you need to know right there. This is your baking aisle. So if you're walking through this store, do you think you would be able to find baking tins here? Or would you expect to find baking tins here? Few people. Just depends on the store, depends on some other things. So let's think about signage. Now, for those of you who do shop at HEB, we have another store has to have this. They have your ability to grind your own coffee. So the image you're seeing on the right, this is again from my local HEB. It's a bulk scale. So what this is, it's a flat scale. Off camera, you have various types of coffee. You put the coffee in a bag. You can get it ground. You pull this lever, goes into your satchel. You weigh it, type in a number, our product lookup number, a PLU, and it gives you the weight, and then you can print off the price. What is wrong with this picture? Good.
Sorry, so you've got to type a number.
Yes. So a PLU is a 5-digit number.
Sometimes
And
7.
sometimes 7. Yeah. And we're going to see on another slide that sometimes those PLU numbers are a little tricky to find. So the instruction is unclear. It's also, if you kind of look at brown on brown, very 70s color palette, but something that is very hard to see. There's also terrible lighting, and it's in one language. If you speak Spanish, how are you supposed to know what to do with this? I mean, I will say I've shopped, traveled internationally and seen stores like this in Germany and Poland. I do not speak German. I do not speak Polish. I cannot figure out what they're asking me to do. I mean, I can kind of guess. Like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to weigh something. I guess I'm supposed to input a number. But if I don't know what I'm looking for, yes.
So I think the thing that's always interesting to me about this too is like over in Europe, I went to a grocery store, right? I went and found a bunch of produce. We threw it in the cart. Well, over there, you're supposed to do a similar thing of weighing, stickering all of your own produce. And so I think the other piece to this that gets really complicated is, so now you have a blind customer. The instinct is, oh, well, I'll just do it for you. Except that I'm going to be coming back to the store every week. So I need to somehow teach you how to use an inaccessible system while also getting back to doing my job. And so I think it creates maybe like a ripple effect throughout the rest of the store scheduling process and the customer experience.
Yeah, we do want to make sure that for customers that this is an opportunity for somebody to maintain that independence. You know, maybe they have a particular item that they want to put that in, and they don't always want somebody to come and do it for them. So this is another example. For the folks in the audience or even online, where is the PLU in the picture on the left? Yes.
Partially covered up in the lower left corner of that kind of peach colored tag sitting kind of behind that metal lip. Yeah.
What do you think those numbers are?
70867. Possibly the first and last ones are 3s, depending on the typography.
Yeah, so depending on the typography, So I think it is actually a 7. So you were correct the first time, but that is a very valid point because that is half obscured. Oh, I may have just entered for something else. Like I may be trying to buy my own freshly ground peanut butter. Why did I just enter the PLU for diapers? Our system's going to throw an error. It's going to be like, what the? We don't sell diapers by the pound, which is going to lead to some very confused customers and potentially very unpleasant checkout experience as, sir, why are you trying to buy? This is peanut butter, not diapers. All right, that's kind of a glib example, but let's talk about some other things.
Oh, sorry.
So, unfortunately, we didn't get a good photo of this, but one of the things that we need when you think about the instructions to grind your own peanut butter, what's going to be the first thing you're going to be looking for? Container. Yes, the bin. You need to put it in something. If you there was no signage for that bin. It was kind of just underneath in the kind of high, there's a little bit of a pile. And it's like, okay, well, I knew where it was, but I shop there all the time.
If Audrey wasn't there whenever I was there, I would have just left it.
Mhm. Now, luckily, peanut butter isn't perishable, so it wouldn't be a huge deal, but still, you then need to acquire the peanut butter by pressing that big green button, which is recessed underneath. Unfortunately, this isn't a great angle, but where do you think that peanut butter is coming out of? Under the lip. All right. So it's this kind of trough tray thing. That's kind of telling you where you need to put, but it's not super clear. There's no arrow. I mean, the first time I used this, I've actually seen people do this. It looks a little strange. You'll have people, they'll put it on that kind of green dot. That's the place cup, but I've seen people like place it off to the side or misplace something. And what ends up happening is, oh, you got peanut butter everywhere, which you now have to clean up. You have to weigh the item. So where do you go and weigh the item? Like if I'm telling you, just looking at this, ignore the photo on the right. Where's the sign to go weigh? There's no like direction. You're standing there. You have your peanut butter. You're looking around. You're confused. You're lost. You just want to make a sandwich.
And for further context, whenever we were trying to get peanut butter, the scale was not next to it. We had to walk around and find the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, so sorry, you
Maybe it's different in Australia, but no one grinds their own peanut butter. But if we look at something else, like the scale would be underneath where the place the cup is.
It's actually a great accessibility solution.
Another thought on making a mess is that it looks like there's just a button to press. And I've seen these types before where it's unclear whether you're supposed to hold the button the entire time or press it and then press it again.
Yes.
And I thought one was a hold. And so when I let go when I wanted it to stop, and it didn't. So then I had to scramble and press it again so that it didn't go all over the place. Whereas like a rocker switch or something that has clear positions is much more obvious as to how it works without being able to read or see it necessarily.
Oh. No, that's okay.
Okay, so
The exercise.
what happens in a situation like that, like you just described, of a person who can't see that it's going to keep going when they don't have, is there auditory cues on your peanut butter grinding machines?
Is there, Audrey?
No. And speaking of buttons, so my background's in industrial engineering. So whenever I get really fascinated by buttons. I know I'm a joy to shop with. So we've got two buttons over here. We've got our on-off switch and our green button. Now I'm one of those people, because I was an inquisitive little child, I would see this and I could imagine a kid coming along and it's like, oh, pressing the, well, which one of those, if you didn't necessarily know, you would think one of those is the power switch. So I'm kind of curious from a, the grinding perspective, why that power switch is in the front. And that kind of makes sense. You don't want to have to pull out. These machines are like 20 pounds a piece. They're pretty heavy. But that's in a place where I could see a customer just, oh, I just turned off the peanut butter grinder. Oh no. And now I can't make my sandwich. Then you need to remember that barcode, which could be 30867 or 4863. So you have to somehow get that up, and now you're confused, and maybe you're ordering the diaper. So how can we make this process more accessible? Well, option one. What? Well, we do sell jars of peanut butter. I mean,
I love that.
I clearly you're an engineer. But what if we were to introduce tactile or pictographic instructions, which could be really, really great, especially if you are trying to break down a language barrier. You know, you don't have to have a thing you need to translate, because, and this is a bit of a horror story, for a human factors horror story. So the word for 11 in Spanish is once, O-N-C-E, which is spelled the same as once. Yes, there have been cases where people have overdosed on medication because they didn't necessarily realize that. So what if we were to create pictographic instructions that do not require translation and better signage? So this entire process, we can make it a nice little assembly line. You grind your peanut butter. So you start, step one, grab the container. Step two, place container here, push button. Wait, maybe there's an auditory cue. It delivers a pre-portioned amount. Maybe it's like 600 grams of peanut butter. Actually, that's a lot of peanut butter. I really like peanut butter. Also, I shouldn't have held this talk so close to lunch. But when we're thinking about feasibility, sustainability, and scalability, make it easy to find an associate. Ultimately, the best solution is the one that allows a customer to get with a partner, because that partner is going to have a lot more flexibility and a lot better understanding about how to make this a good experience for you as a customer, and even working with you to say, oh yeah, you know what, that number is a little bit hard to read. Let me look that up for you.
And just to add a little bit more color here, so a lot of the solutions that this group talked about are very like, yes, like this is so true. Why not make it auditory? You know, like why not do certain things? Whenever we're introducing technology into stores, we're working with outside external companies who bring in that technology. So a lot of the times we can't design those things. And so what HEB does is it knows its people. You will go into an HEB and it's so easy to find a partner on the floor and talk to them. And that's why an accessible solution for us is the framework of our company. People matter. It's so easy to turn around and see a partner to ask for help.
Red shirt.
And so this is kind of the nexus of what we do as a company when we think about sustainable, feasible, and scalable solutions, is making sure our partners are trained for that impact for the customer experience.
Next slide. Ultimately, when we're thinking about this from a solutions, and ultimately we want to make sure that no matter which store you go into, whether it's one in Monterrey, Mexico, or up in Denton, up in the Dallas area, we want our solutions to be sustainable. So they need to be self-sustaining, and they need to be something that's cost efficient. You know, expensive solutions that break are bad. Well, from a business perspective, they need to be feasible. So they need to be something that we can implement today. They need to be something that we can easily, that is a nice proximal growth area. We don't have to spend time and energy training partners on very, very niche technology. We can train them to understand the best procedure. How do we work with a blind customer? How do we work with a deaf customer? You know, how do they find somebody who speaks ASL? And it also needs to be scalable. So it needs to fit in a wide variety of contexts. So this needs to be something that, whether you're shopping at my HEB, which is about 2 miles down the road, or Vanessa's, which is up in Pflugerville, or even in Wimberley, it's going to be that same experience. So now what? You want to take it?
So what can we do? We can continue to strategize balanced business solutions to, one, create a consistent customer and partner experience, to address tangible needs that we see and interact with every day, all in a sustainable and feasible and scalable way. HEB is at a really good place in our company and in our journey for accessibility and disability inclusiveness, but we are not perfect. and there's always room for improvement. And by being advocates in this space, we are holding other grocery retailer spaces accountable to meet these standards and maybe exceed and go above. So that's all we have today. I
Yeah.
hope you enjoyed our discussion.
So at this point, I think we've got about 15 minutes or so left in our scheduled time. Is that correct? Yes. I'm getting the nod that that is a yes. Does anyone have any questions on anything we talked about? I see the folks online have been very quiet.
Even just comments of your personal experience.
So I shop at HEB because I'm here in Austin, and I've had multiple experiences actually at, is it the Central Market location that has all the, okay, so I was there, and I've had multiple experiences with deaf checkers, and I love how the technology's incorporated. They'll have their phone right there, and they'll have you, they're able to get you to communicate through their phone, and they'll type something in, show you the question, and they'll be able to have the phone translate your responses back. And I just think that's awesome that HEB has thought of that and how to help accommodate that.
Thank you.
For those who don't know, Central Market is the up brand of HEB.
It's like our Whole
Uh,
Foods version.
Yes, okay. I thought I saw your hand up.
So I'm also a human factors professional, and you always know that you've got a poorly designed product when you get out to the checkout line and there's like a Post-it note or a taped handwritten sign, which is trying to get around some poorly. But what was really interesting to me in this presentation is this idea that as a grocery store, you're stuck buying the poorly designed industrial products from vendors, and then you have to make them usable, like walk in and learn usable. And so I appreciate the efforts to making your own custom signage to try and make up for the badly designed products that you're forced to buy.
Yeah, very true.
And as a fellow human factors professional, it is incredibly, it is an experience to walk in and see these signs where it's like, okay, I appreciate the business rationale that went into this, that it needs to be sustainable. You need to clean it. There's all these safety considerations, but it's also from that customer perspective, how do we make it so that people actually want to use this in the simplest way possible? If you design, there's a comment about like, oh, there is no foolproof system because fools are ingenious. We also don't want people getting hurt, is the point. So, yes, Devin, the totally not plant.
Right. So I'm from HEB as well. I've got a question about your metric for maturity when it comes to applying accessibility in the digital space. Like, is there something that y'all are shooting for? Or is this something that we need to like take offline and discuss in a professional setting that's not a conference? I was just kind of curious how y'all are approaching it, and if there's kind of a general space that you're shooting for.
So this is a little both. So for me, with my background, I'm one of those people that says you should always get out. You should always try and test it with customers. The best designs, like I don't know. We've got a lot of great designers. We don't always understand where our own shortcomings or biases and such are, because there might be a situation where it's like, yeah, this makes perfect sense. I've written instructions that make perfect sense to me. They make perfect sense to me, but that doesn't mean they make perfect sense to Vanessa. That doesn't mean they'll make perfect sense to Jan or Devin here in the audience. So we believe in like, well, we want to get out into the store and we want to at least try this and try and figure out, there's a lot of great ideas that we might have, such as how do we give instructions in relation to big landmarks, such as bakery? Like, okay, you're going to walk, you're going to smell bread. How easy is that to actually implement? And can customers actually understand what we're saying? Because it might be one of those situations where like, that doesn't sound particularly organic. And it doesn't necessarily conform with how you expect to receive directions. It'd be like saying, okay, so you're going to drive on the 35 until you smell gas. get out of the car. It doesn't make sense to give you directions like that necessarily. It makes more sense for me to say, okay, you're going to drive on 35. You're going to see a building that looks like a big flower. Once you pass that, it'll be the next exit. You're going to get off and you're going to turn left. So how do we give these directions in relation to something that sounds organic, that sounds like how people talk, and it incorporates with your mental model of the store? Because, you know, I may not be able to smell as well as Vanessa, or I might be a little hard of hearing. I spent years in a pep band without ear protection. So yeah, I don't always hear things particularly well. So to answer that maturity question, we want this to be something that we can implement and we can test and we can validate quickly. So we want to, and on a personal level, I'm one of those folks that would say, unfortunately, you can spend a lot of time trying to make the perfect solution, and sometimes the best solution to give people is one that works and one that they can implement today, and then you can gather that feedback and do that cycling.
I would also add to that and say that we should be advocating for and modeling the example that our store partners do. So as it was mentioned earlier, like our store partners are, you know, at the hand of basically the technology that is delivered to them, whether it be digital or physical technology, but they have their workarounds, and they have, whenever they're recruited, whenever they're trained and all of this stuff, they're trained with that people first mindset. And in digital, we do that, but it's making sure that we are those voices in the room, in our meetings, and to continue to model that example. If engineering says we don't have time to accessibility test this for navigation in the app, we have to be able to, you know, own it up and navigate. I mean, not navigate. We have to own it and push for it and be those advocates. Like, no, we have users who need this and use it. And so what can we do in order to make this a solution that is feasible?
So I do think we're at time. If there's Vanessa and I will be hanging out for a little bit if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you for attending, and be sure to check out HEB.